It is time for Daniel in the Deacon's Den. We always enjoy this segment. I just like the title of the segment, but also love the host of the segment.
Absolutely.
It's Deacon Dan Brahier. Good morning, Deacon Dan.
Good morning, Dave. Good morning, Ron. How are you today?
We're doing pretty good so far, despite the jokes that we just told. But we're recovering, and so is our audience. Now, you always have important stuff going on and a lot of great content. But I know you and your wife participated in the Deacon and Wives Convocation. I assume you both did this past weekend. How was that?
Yes, we did. Thanks for asking. It was a great weekend. We only do this every 2 years for the deacons and their wives in the diocese. And I know I talked a little bit last week about kind of anticipating it. And now that it has happened, I'm even more energized by the whole experience. The idea is to get together every 2 years to kind of build community and to have a little bit of continuing formation and just an opportunity to pray and spend time together. And it's great because it gives all of us an opportunity to kind of walk from table to table and catch up with men and their wives who are scattered all over the diocese. When I was ordained, we had 20 men in our class. And, it's been 8 years almost since I was ordained, and all 20 of us have never been in the same room together since then.
Wow.
Wow. So isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. You get splintered off. Everybody gets sent off to their own ministry. You're busy in your own parish. You got things going on, and all of a sudden, you're just not connecting anymore. And so, although our whole class was not there were, a majority of us, and just to be able to get together and how is your ministry going and what are you doing and that sort of thing. So it was a great opportunity. There were about 100 people there, and we were hosted by Bishop Eric Pohlmeyer. He's the Bishop of St. Augustine, Florida. He actually originally was from, he was born in Colorado, but he spent most of his life in Arkansas. He was a priest there for 24 years before he was elevated to bishop. And one point of trivia is that Bishop Thomas was Bishop Pohlmeyer's spiritual director in seminary. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And he just did an incredible job. He spent much of his presenting time talking about the power of prayer. He talked about 5 kind of roles that a deacon plays as well. So I thought I'd share a few highlights of that morning, of that, his morning and evening sessions, just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of a taste of it. And one of the things that he started off when he was talking about prayer, and I love this, it really have thought a lot about it since then. He said, we really as people do not trust in the spiritual and in the spiritual life. And I at first you kind of take that and go, well, yes, we do. I mean, we're deacons or we're, lay people that pray a lot, et cetera. But he said, here is the evidence of it. How often do you hear people say, boy, I sure wish I could help you, but all I can do, I guess, is just to pray for you.
Yeah, you're right.
Really. Yeah. And I think we're all guilty. We've said that ourselves, right? And he said, that alone is evidence that we don't believe in the spiritual, because what we're really saying to that person is, if there's something I could really physically, concretely do for you, I would. But unfortunately, I can't, so I guess I'll just pray for you.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's kind of striking because, in a sense, what happens is we look at prayer as like a last alternative if we can't really do something to help somebody. And in reality, prayer should be the first thing we do. And yes, even if we can concretely lend them a hand, then it should be accompanied by prayer. And so he talked about that in terms of matrimony, because we have all these deacons and their wives gathered there, and he said, one of the things that as married couples we should be doing is constantly reviewing the vows that we made to our spouse on our wedding day, and keep asking ourselves, how am I doing? And he pointed out, and this is one of those that just resonated, I think, with all of us. He said, when's the last time you actually sat down and prayed about the vows that you took at your wedding?
Wow.
Really, because it's just sort of that one and done. On your wedding day, you say the vows, you walk off, you go about your life, and you ever actually stop and sit down and pray your way through those vows and ask yourself as a benchmark, really, how am I doing?
Wow.
again, just this whole idea of bringing prayer into everything that we do. And that allowed him to sort of move forward then into this discussion. And I had never heard it framed this way before, and that is what he described as sort of 5 roles that a deacon plays. And we could probably spend, a segment or 2 on this program on each of these, and we might at some point, but I just wanted to kind of highlight what he talked about. Because we get this question a lot of sort of, the things that deacons do, because they're, relatively new in our church in the last 50 years since it's been restored. So one is an intercessor. This idea that a deacon prays for other people. And we pray the Liturgy of the Hours. We're praying for the church constantly. We're the ones who present the universal prayer, or the prayers of the faithful at Mass. And so a deacon is ordained to pray for other people. And, and that's why kind of historically deacons have been the ones who have either prepared the universal prayer, the prayers of the faithful for Mass, or at least reviewed or edited them to make sure that we are praying for those in the community that are in most need of our help, And then secondly, our role is a reconciler. So we talked about as an example that we lead the penitential rite at Mass, and we acknowledge the need for reconciliation and intercession on behalf of the faith community. And so he called us to be reconcilers in our community, but also in our families, with strangers, and particularly to remind people of the mercy of God. And so, trying to reconcile and bring relationship with God back together for ourselves and others. The third one was a little harder to understand, and it was just so deep and so good. But the third role he talked about is the deacon as martyr. Martyr as in we are responsible for the chalice at Mass. And so, anytime we celebrate the Mass and we offer worship, we're offering a sacrifice, and the deacon is intimately connected in that sacrifice through the care of the precious blood. If you think about it, the deacon does everything at the Mass with the precious blood. We put the water and wine in the cup. We hand it to the priest. We elevate it at the end of the consecration. Right. We distribute the cup. We purify the vessels. And so, we are intimately connected to the precious blood, to that martyrdom, if you will, that death of ourselves and of Christ. So I remember when we were in formation, we were told that the deacon literally gives his blood for the church. So it's fitting that we would fill that role, that's what it's about. One of the things he said that was just really profound to me, and it struck me on Sunday morning as soon as I assisted at Mass for the next time, and that is when the deacon walks up to the altar, he puts the water and wine in the cup, and he hands it to the priest.
Yeah.
The next time the priest hands it back to the deacon, it has been consecrated into the blood of Christ. How profound is that?
Right.
When Father Grodi handed me that chalice, after the consecration, I immediately thought of Bishop Holmeyer's comment. I thought, oh my gosh, I gave him wine and he gave me blood back. How amazing is that? And then the fourth role is a herald. So think of John the Baptist as heralding the good news. So we symbolically do that at the beginning of Mass. We carry in the book of Gospels, and it's symbolic of that sharing of the word. We're going to proclaim the gospel at Mass. We're going to preach a homily at Mass. We're going to teach in OCIA. So we're announcing the dying and rising of Christ, sharing that hope of the gospel as heralds. And then the last role he talked about was as a missioner. We end Mass not just by, saying, okay, Mass is over, go home. We say, go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. Like, go forth and spread this gospel message. And we are encouraging parishioners to do that. And our job then is to bring others to a place where they can spread the gospel. So as deacons, it's our responsibility to invite them to share that word. So overall, I think what happened for me this weekend, it was just a great opportunity, not only for building community, but to give us a deeper understanding of our marriage and the importance of that in our lives, and this whole idea of what the order of deacon is all about. And we all left just totally energized and anxious to get back into our parishes.
Love that so much, Deacon Dan. And this idea, I mean, look, I never thought about, but I'll never forget now, the connection of the deacon with the chalice and all the movements of the chalice and all of those things. So thank you for that. What a wonderful presentation, and thanks be to God for such a wonderful weekend, and with the wives as well. God bless you, brother.
Thank you. You too. Have a great week.